Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap. It is another Monday where we've got a wide variety of things, and life is complicated right now, and I don't know if it perhaps ever will return to quote-unquote normalcy, but certainly 2020 will be considered a watershed year in our history, not from just a sports standpoint, obviously, but from a human standpoint, and it's reflected in the world of sports. And what that reflection today gives us is things that are very serious, things that are movements that have gone on for a long time that finally get changed in a differing atmosphere, leagues that are approaching issues like social justice in a completely different way than would have been accepted, if not embraced, as of just literally months ago. You can see it in the coaches in MLS, just plain and simple, wearing T-shirts that say Black Lives Matter, something that now is a rallying cry for so many different things, from college basketball to soccer to worldwide soccer, and exposing racial hatred that's seen in really vile messages to players in the English Premier League, and all kinds of things from that regard, all in the context of a coronavirus that continues to be problematic, to say the least, in this nation and around the world, but maybe more so right now in this nation, as we have turned it again into a political football instead of a health issue, and that certainly is troubling. And we, after real progress was made towards the end of May and maybe into early June, is now completely backfired. A national record set in Florida for cases yesterday, and reports over the weekend that indicate that certainly many people who perhaps are not taking this as seriously have been saying that, well, these cases are way up, but the deaths are down. Well, it's a thing that happens that with the deaths coming afterwards, and that started to happen, and that's tragic, and how it impacts sports certainly is still way up in the air. We see MLS coming back despite the fact that a couple of teams can't play. We see leagues across America in college sports deciding not to play fall sports. We'll see how that impacts things. The major conferences, a couple of them already, deciding that non-conference play will be the only thing. So all across the board, we're seeing a remarkable amount of news and shifts and controversies and battles. And hopefully some of these things will not be battles and they'll be positives. This also amidst a little silliness. We get to toss in a little silliness, and that was provided nationally by Kansas City Chiefs Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce at the American Century, and some fun was had there, to say the least, as they were in the spotlight at that celebrity golf tournament in a beautiful setting like Lake Tahoe, where I had the privilege of going a few times to cover that particular event. It's all part of the menu here on Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap, and we'll get at it right after this. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back. In the breaking news of the day, certainly wasn't unexpected, and that was the news that the Washington Redskins, or now Washington football franchise, because they're not the Redskins anymore, officially made the announcement that they will drop their name. And this is a reflection of a whole bunch of different things. First of all, it's a reflection of the changing times that we have, the seriousness that people are taking the Black Lives Matter movement, but also what we see plain and simple is the economics of sports and life, because major sponsors like FedEx and Nike put pressure on the Washington Redskins, pressure that otherwise I don't think Daniel Snyder was in any way, shape, or form inclined to change that. He many times had said never would he change it as the owner of the Washington Redskins, and now he has. And what I think it reflects is that corporate America sees that this is an issue that resonates with many more people than they ever anticipated before, and that this is a correct thing to do. Giant businesses who are in the business of pleasing a large percentage of their clientele are not inclined to do things just out of the goodness of their own heart. And while you can laud, and should laud, the motives potentially of these two gigantic corporations, they have business reasons for doing this as well. And that pressure has now finally, I would say, forced the Redskins into changing their name, and we'll see what they change it to. I would say that there's a very good chance they'll change it to Red Tails, which is a nod to the Tuskegee Airmen from World War II, and their planes were dubbed the Red Tails. It's kind of a perfect way to do things. You can have a logo that's pretty cool. You can keep the same kind of color scheme, which is what they want to do. And now the ripple effect of this is what franchises will do who still hold Native American names. Truth be told, I haven't said this probably on this podcast a couple times. My family history is not exacting, but I am either 1/8 or 1/4 Native American, so this issue resonates with me. But the Chicago Blackhawks have announced that they're going to keep their name. The Atlanta Braves announced that they are going to keep their name. And as I said last week, the Redskins' name has just been appalling forever. It's a racial slur. There's nothing that can justify using that particular name. I don't care what kind of history there is. I don't care what kind of polling there is or where you go. It's a racial slur. It was. Does it resonate now? No, because nobody uses it, but that doesn't mean that it isn't offensive as something that we should have put in the past and now are putting in the past. The other names, be it Chiefs, Braves, Blackhawks, whatever, are arguable. Obviously, these are brave names per se. The Blackhawks is a homage to a famous Indian chief, and so there's some celebratory nature to that, but it's the ancillary things that are the issues here. Chiefs as a name, whether it's for H. Roe Bartle or whatever the history of the name was. In fact, Vahe Gregorian, you should read it, did an incredible column that was online, I think, as of Saturday, was up on the actual physical paper or virtual paper, whichever you like, on Sunday. And he just went through the entire history of this particular situation in his usual in-depth fashion. And while the tenor of the piece was advocating that the Chiefs perhaps walk away from the Chief name, he never really just came out and said it. It was not that type of piece. As Vahe is so good at doing, he just makes a historic case for where we are at and pretty much lets you decide where you are at. And interestingly enough, when they did the poll that of the people to choose a name when the franchise moved from Dallas to Kansas City, Chiefs did not win. It was fourth, and it was a distant fourth. But there was some internal pressure to name it Chiefs, and that's what they did. But the issue here is not the name, because as I said, the name itself is not inherently offensive. It is it is the things that go around it, like the tomahawk chop or the slamming of the drum or the headdress or war paint, all those things that are caricatures and not particularly great ones. And what people do is they don't think. And this, if something is offensive to a significant minority, and I'm not saying it's anywhere near a majority, because the Native Americans are not anywhere near a majority of our country, then it should be looked at, because this is supposed to be fun. And if you're taking a segment of your fan base and saying that this isn't fun for me, and that was talked about in that article for somebody from an advocacy group for Native Americans, then it has to be strongly looked at. And mindlessly doing the tomahawk chop and not thinking about the ramifications or the thoughts that it has for other people is a lot what this current movement is all about, is to make people think, not just go along with what's always gone on. And we are seeing it in very, very effective ways. And for some people, I'm sure it's troubling. It comes probably at there's no good time to have unrest and strife in any nation. But when you're suffering from a pandemic at the same time as another important aspect that can be divisive goes on, it mixes up people's lives to a disturbing amount. People like normalcy. They like status quo, and shaking up the status quo is difficult. And I think in the end, we are going to see this be a tremendously positive thing, this Black Lives Matter movement, with people having their eyes opened. People who are entrenched in their views are not going to change their mind. And if it only results in a 10% shift or something of people's ideas and motivations, if people who were just passive, not in any way social justice or anything like that, but just passive on the issue, if that energizes them, then it becomes an incredibly powerful thing. And we are seeing it reflected in issues that had laid dormant for years and years and years and now are moving forward. And we'll see what impact it has. It seems very likely the Cleveland Indians are going to change their name, and we'll see what happens here in Kansas City. I would say it's a long shot that the Chiefs are going to change their name from the Kansas City Chiefs, but maybe they will be much more forthright in trying to advocate against the use of other things like the imagery that is created by the name Kansas City Chiefs. I mentioned the managers for the teams in MLS wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts, and that included Peter Vermees, and it's just a stark and great reminder of a big issue. And you can't just walk away from it, because managers, especially Peter Vermees, who are volatile on the sidelines, are shown dozens of times during a soccer match, and that was the case last night on ESPN, on the major ESPN network, as Sporting Kansas City played. Well, from a soccer standpoint, the game ended up being a disaster. Sporting, for much of the match, looked every bit as good as they had in winning their first couple of games and looking like one of the better teams in MLS. But soccer is a very, very fickle sport, because it's a low-scoring game, and if you don't take full advantage of being a dominating team for the first hour of the game, you can see the game turn on its head in the final third of the game. Eventually, Minnesota, having not fallen behind by more than just one goal, found their footing a bit in the game, and they were the aggressors. And then, of course, Tim Melia got sent off the field, and it was an absolute red card, and he got caught in no man's land on a play, wiped out the attacking player, and it was certainly a deserved red card. But Sporting held in there until extra time, when they gave up a tying goal and then a winning goal. So what in many ways had to be looked at as a good effort as far as the Sporting Kansas City team is concerned ends up just being a loss. And now the group stage, which only consists of 3 games, is problematical for Sporting Kansas City, and these games do indeed count in the standings. What will be interesting is that a couple of teams aren't playing now because so many players on their teams have tested positive, and how they're going to adjust that as far as the standings are concerned. I would imagine what they're going to do, if this season continues in its entirety, we'll have to wait and see whether that happens, is that those games are going to have to be made up, creating an even more congested schedule for the teams trying to complete their season. So disappointing evening from Sporting, but perhaps a more impactful evening for Peter Vermees and his team, because of their first outing with Vermees on the sideline wearing the T-shirt with the Black Lives Matter slogan. As mentioned, the coronavirus isn't going anywhere, and whether college football is going to go anywhere remains to be seen. What we've seen in the last few days is first the Big Ten and then the Pac-10 announcing that they're not going to play non-conference football. We've seen numerous conferences, the latest today being the Patriot League, some of the smaller conferences that aren't going to play fall sports at all. Junior college football appears well on its way to playing their college football in the spring. And more, it just seems like the college football season is in tremendous peril. That was even stated by probably the conference that is seen as the one that most desperately and stubbornly wants to play football, and that's the Southeast Conference. Greg Stanke and the SEC are meeting later today, to talk about the future of their conference, and they say they're not affected by what other conferences do, but the Pac-12 has been marginalized a little bit as far as being a powerful conference over the last few years, but that's just performance-related. But the Big Ten carries a big stick. They're big universities, they're respected universities, and they've got hundreds and hundreds and thousands of alumni. They're gigantic schools, and what they say is impactful to other conferences. There's no question about that. The ACC, the Big 12, they are holding out. Everybody has talked about late July. Well, late July is getting here. It's the 13th of July now, and I am just thinking that it's really now a long shot that college football is going to be played. I think it's for sure not going to be played to its full extent. And with teams testing positive at very high rates and shutting down their practices, it just seems almost impossible that teams are going to play. But we'll have to wait and see. And that's all you can do these days is wait and see. And what we have wait and seen is that we're not making very good progress as far as flattening the curve. Well, we did flatten the curve once, but the curve has gone up again and really shows no signs of abating. All the optimism about the fact that when we got to the warm weather months, that would help and people would be outdoors, and that's all turned out to be malarkey in the end. And the COVID situation is really not getting better, and it doesn't appear that people have the stomach for trying to work hard to make it get better. And more, I think people are just saying, well, let's just ride it out and try to live normally and have empty stadiums and have music venues that are empty and things like that. And that's not a normal that I'm looking forward to, but I think a lot of people are weary, and we do get weary too fast in this country. We have short attention spans, and things that 30 years ago or 40 years ago, like shutting things down for a couple of months, seem too onerous to even embrace. But perhaps stronger voices or respected voices, like, Kansas basketball fans love Bill Self. They have a right to love Bill Self. He has provided them joy after joy after joy. And he in an interview the other day, said he would advocate for just completely shutting the country down for 2 weeks, literally. Like, everybody's got to stay home. You go out, you shop, you get 2 weeks worth of groceries, you never leave the house. And he said he thought that, maybe there's not science there, but it makes a reasonable amount of sense that you would get some kind of flattening of the curve from doing that. And when people who are thoughtful people are suggesting things as drastic as that, you would think that people who are on the other side of it are going to think a little bit about it. But I think that's perhaps a wildly optimistic viewpoint. When you see an image the other day from the Missouri governor, and he's going to give out awards at a police ceremony, and it's indoors. And I think Dave Helling put this on Twitter from the Kansas City Star, and there's like 60 people in a picture or two, and none of them are wearing masks, literally none of them, then you can see that we're going to have a hard time making much progress in this regard. And now we have leagues that are playing, and maybe that's providing some encouragement, very successfully as far as European soccer is concerned so far. So far, American soccer, I would say marginally successful if you don't even have a couple teams playing. We haven't started baseball and basketball. A lot of players are deciding that they don't want to play. Not yet a significant enough amount to threaten the return to play, but that may increase too. Baseball might be the biggest litmus test of all, because they are not trying to do things in a bubble. They are trying to have a reasonable amount of normality, traveling, playing in the cities that they play in. Yes, they've changed it to make it more regional, and yes, they are encouraging their players to, be very careful, and they're doing all the things at the stadium, but these players are all leaving and going home and going about their business when they're not playing baseball. And these are young people, and we've seen that young people have more and more become infected because they went through a period where none of their peers were testing positive. The general narrative was that young people weren't going to be much affected by this. And then when we reopened and people started gathering inside in bars and restaurants and things like that, in an atmosphere where we had this virus out there, at the outset, there was, the virus had not been spread very much. And so gathering was not that problematical for younger people. Well, now we went through this period and thousands of people have been infected, and surfaces have been infected, and all this type of thing has been affected. And then they go back into restaurants, and we've seen an incredible spike. And many of the sports things that have been affected by us are in the states where they opened up the earliest and most aggressively. And it has not been in any way effective, and people's economic arguments for it are kind of obtuse as well and counterintuitive, because if we have to go back and reshut things down as they have in many of these states now, then you're not going to get the economic impact that you wanted by opening back up. So all is generally still uncertain, and each week we come here on a Monday and report about things like this, and generally the news is very mixed, and sometimes it's a little better than others, and we'll just see where we lie next Monday. Well, after the break, let's get a little lighthearted, and we always try to toss in some of that stuff. We need smiles in our lives these days, and Kansas City gets to celebrate on so many levels with their championship and with their quarterback who makes news each and every week, sometimes tangibly as far as his contract is concerned, sometimes tangentially as far as his appearance at a celebrity golf tournament. That and a little bit more coming up straight ahead.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner, and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that, and moving on in age as we all are. What do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. They just contacted me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and there were smiles all around at the American Century Golf Tournament. First of all, the winning player was Marty Fish, who was the Davis Cup captain, and he went out there in the third round and shot himself a nice 63. They do everything possible at this tournament to make the celebrities look pretty good. The course is not particularly difficult. It's not particularly long. They'll put the pins in places where the ball will tend to gather, as you saw in one of Patrick Mahomes' better shots. Mahomes went out and shot in the high 80s the first two rounds, and then an 82 in the third round. Those scores are a little marginalized because you can pick up after you make a double bogey, so it's probably a little bit high, but still for a guy who hasn't really played that much golf in his life, he's reasonably acceptable. But, I mean, you get points for merely making pars. You get no points for making a bogey. So you don't even get a negative when you make a bogey, and it's 2 points to the negative for making a double bogey. Literally, you can go around and have your score listed as around 100, like Charles Barkley does, when he didn't. I think he made like 3 or 4 bogeys as his best score in 3 rounds of golf, and probably picked up on the majority of the holes. Scores that, they actually, if you go on the website, you can see the scores, and those scores are basically probably 5, 6, 10, 15 shots better than they really were. The good players, their scores are legitimate. You can see them. That's what they are in general, and certainly there are very good players there. But generally, this thing is there for fun, and a lot of people did have a lot of fun, and certainly Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes were among those. Kelce generally shot in the low 90s, quote-unquote. He did make an eagle. Patrick Mahomes made a couple of birdies the last day, but more was the wet willies and the chest bumps and the fun that they were having. And we started to see the new and growing, not even new, what am I saying new, the growing and growing and growing impact of Patrick Mahomes, as clearly he's going to make a whole boatload of money from Coors Light because he was sporting Coors Light gear all weekend long, and he was really the focal point of the broadcast. Really, this is a very unusual event. It very much resembles on the PGA Tour the third round of the Pebble Beach Invitational, where the actual quote-unquote real golf doesn't matter. Nobody really cares about the competition. They care about the sponsors, and that's where, or the celebrities, and that's where the general lion's share of the focus goes. And if it so happens that a really big celebrity like Steph Curry can also be one of the better golfers, that works. But generally, I mean, Kyle Williams was leading this tournament for a while. I literally forgot that he was a football player, a defensive lineman. I had to look it up. And, John Smoltz is a retired baseball player. Marty Fish was a good tennis player, but not a fantastic one. So those people they're the best golfers, and nobody really cares. What they care about is seeing Patrick Mahomes out there having a good time, having a beer or two. Obviously, social media imagery of them boating and having a good time. They were staying together, doing their own version of quarantining, as it were. So you just hope that nothing negative comes out of this. There's a lot of nightlife there. You just wonder what we will see as an impact of the fallout of it. There weren't fans, but there are a lot of people in boats nearby. You can't do anything about that. It did create a good atmosphere, and that's generally where they show most of the golf, is on the last few holes that are alongside Lake Tahoe, and it's an incredible sight. It's an incredible place to go. It's hard. It's not easy to get there, but if you ever get the chance to go, it's a wonderful spot to just about do anything, and certainly that was part of it. And it just continues putting Kansas City in the spotlight and creating an atmosphere of fun around the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and certainly it's all smiles, and that is one thing that absolutely right now. I mean, think of all the great things that Patrick Mahomes has done, but maybe his greatest impact right now is the fact that amidst all the serious news, some of it very important serious news, some of it just flat annoying serious news, and as far as the virus is concerned, that Patrick Mahomes has been a beacon for Kansas City and a reason to have some fun and have some smiles, and we need smiles these days. We need them more and more and more. And sometimes we do need the frowns, too. We do need to take the serious look at serious issues. And we are getting to do that And that's the good aspect of what has been a troubling 2020. And as we hit the back end of this year, you hope for things to be impactful and improved. And in one area, I think we're getting that. And we hope that somehow, some way, despite our own failings in that regard, we make progress as far as the coronavirus is concerned, because we could really use it. And one other golf note, the PGA Tour is in a pretty good place right now for it's in the spotlight because there's still not that much sports out there. They have a lot of young stars. They had a very exciting tournament over the weekend. They're spending 2 weeks in Ohio. Their tests, they've had some positive tests, but it's generally been pretty low. The golf has been great, so the world of golf has provided some smiles as well. And Colin Morikawa, one of the young stars of the PGA Tour, won his second event. Really a just impressive young man of just 22 years of age, Cal Berkeley educated and articulate, good-looking, all those things that are important. He's an Asian American, so I think all that kind of ties into what we're living through right now as well. And he's a big star coming up, and the PGA Tour has a lot of them. And there's so many of them that probably one can't make an impact. Well, it's silly, obvious to say like Tiger Woods, but we just see somebody even like Jordan Spieth comes on, and he comes on with a burst. And people are starting to make comparisons because he's won 3 majors by the time, same at the same rate that Tiger Woods does, and now basically he's not even on the radar. There's just a whole slew of good young players on the PGA Tour, and it is a positive and fresh time for that tour. So golf doing its part to provide some laughs and smiles and entertainments and competition in our sports world. That'll wrap up another complex edition of Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, and we'll be back at it next Monday. And, of course, during the course of the week, we have all the other things we do here at DannyKlinkscale.com, our Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday. We'll talk music on Wednesday. We have our personality profiles on Friday and all the other fun things that we do here. I appreciate the numbers that continue to grow and grow and grow at DannyKlinkscale.com. Certainly feel free to spread the word and put some smiles on my face and my family's face as well as we continue. And we'll talk to you again real soon, and try to be safe and be well and maybe make an impact in somebody else's life and the life of your community.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.